I'll be a proud feminist in City Hall.
I'm a proud feminist in City Hall. I'm a proud feminist. I'm a proud feminist. I'm a proud feminist. I'm a feminist. I'm a proud feminist.
But I saw that the mayor didn't have.
Is that a question? Sorry, is that a question?
Could you stop interrupting the member and allow her to ask
not really.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thing I would reflect on, Mr. Mayor. Stop interrupting me. You interrupt all the women in this chamber.
For those young people watching, not all politicians are rude, like some of them, Susan Hall. Some are very polite and courteous.
And some answer questions, everybody in the audience.
Chair, I want to say this in a way that doesn't appear patronising, but the naivety of the chair of TfL saying publicly a figure...
Thank you for an estimate today, Mr. Mayor, not a figure.
Well, I'm not giving you an estimate. I think just demonstrates why, with respect, Londoners were right to reject you twice when you stood to be mayor.
I have no further questions.
You spent more time thinking about how you could answer these questions and less ways you could try and insult me over a petty word choice, then you'd probably be in a better position for London.
What's that, pot kettle black?
I don't know if I've offended you in any way, but thank you.
Pot kettle black, is it?
Assembly Member Best, have you finished?
She's finished, I can assure you that, Chair.
Will you join that campaign, yes or no?
As Assembly Best, you can write to the Mayor, and I'm sure we can answer.
I have written, he hasn't responded. It's a yes or no question.
2030 is your own target. Is that something that you can now commit to when it comes to wood burning?
Assembly Member Bukhari, you are.
That was not fair.
Can you answer the questions? I know it's obviously difficult for you if the actual question isn't written down.
Ask the question rather than a speech.
You need to make sure he answers the question.
Let me just tell you. Assembly members ask questions, the Mayor answers them. You don't interrupt him, please. He doesn't interrupt you when you ask questions.
It's very telling how angry you are at me for asking a simple question of the Mayor when you weren't that angry at him using inflammatory language. You're supposed to chair these meetings, and it's frankly embarrassing.
Assembly Member Best, I'm the chair and you make comments through me. Do you hear that? Do you hear that? Do you hear that? No, I will chair it and I'm chairing it.
You can try and be condescending all you like, Mr. Mayor. I've repeated the figures
give me a chance. I'll be more so. Give me a chance.
When Sadiq Khan swept into City Hall in 2016, it was on the promise of progressive leadership, bold reforms, and inclusive governance. His rhetoric was wrapped in the language of equality, transparency, and environmental stewardship. But nearly a decade into his mayoralty, Londoners are waking up to a troubling reality. Khan's glossy progressive branding has begun to fray, revealing a pattern of obfuscation, unfulfilled promises, and performative politics that are eroding trust in the office he holds. Perhaps nowhere is Khan's performative politics more evident than in his self-congratulatory feminist branding. In countless speeches and press releases, the Mayor has declared London to be a feminist city under his leadership. He's championed women's rights in public forums and wrapped himself in the language of inclusion. But rhetoric is not reality. Behind the scenes and away from the cameras, women in politics and civil society who have tried to work with or challenge Khan describe a very different picture. A number of female assembly members have criticized his dismissive tone, unwillingness to engage seriously with their proposals, and failure to create a truly inclusive environment in City Hall. His feminist declarations seem increasingly like a cynical marketing strategy, a way to co-opt progressive language without committing to the hard, often uncomfortable work of systemic reform. In fact, several prominent women's groups in London have grown wary of Khan's virtue signaling. They argue that his policies are more focused on symbolic gestures, like photo ops and buzzword-laden campaigns, than substantive protections or empowerment. While London faces a growing crisis in women's safety, rising rates of gender-based violence, and deepening inequality in housing and employment, the Mayor continues to posture as a progressive champion without delivering the goods. Londoners have heard the Mayor speak endlessly about his ambitions for a greener capital. Yet, as Assembly members pointed out during the latest hearing, his policies on air quality remain patchy and toothless. Despite mounting evidence that wood burning contributes significantly to particulate pollution, particularly in winter months, Khan's administration has failed to enforce meaningful restrictions or communicate a clear timeline for phasing it out. His answers during questioning were vague, evasive, and, in the words of one assembly member, an insult to Londoners' intelligence. Rather than engage in a forthright discussion, Khan deflected, danced around direct questions, and invoked his standard buzzwords. He leaned once again on his well-worn claim of being on the side of science, a phrase that by now seems more like a reflexive shield than a sincere position. There was a time when Khan represented a hopeful break from the bluster and theatrics of his predecessor, Boris Johnson. But as the years have passed, his leadership has taken on many of the same flaws. Centralization of power, prioritization of personal image over public service, and a creeping disdain for scrutiny. His administration increasingly resembles a purr operation more than a serious apparatus of governance. Now we come to the next news.
This is the most shameful U-turn yet, in my opinion. And I'm just 45 minutes notice, apparently, that was given to Parliament to attend this debate. Obviously, the benches opposite were relatively empty. That's there to make the opposition look bad, even though that was a terrible use of scrutiny, because all ministers need scrutiny on their policies, and clearly they were trying to dodge that. So well done to Katie Lamb MP for showing up for that. But the reality is even reading that Home Office spokesperson's statement, is it's quite clear they're saying they're not doing local inquiries. They're saying local, as you said, locally funded support. That's not the same thing. And quite frankly, the 5 local inquiries weren't good enough in the first place. We needed a national inquiry. Now, that was already turned down. And this is shameless, Patrick. One day before recess, so they know they can't be held accountable. How utterly cowardly.
How do you genuinely feel about it? In your heart of hearts, I know
I'm not lying to you about how I feel about Patrick.
No, I'm asking you genuinely. If it was you there who was Prime Minister, or you were Jess Phillips or whatever, do you think you would have just gone ahead with what Yvette Cooper had said?
Look, I think we have to also just zoom out a bit and point out that this was not a political issue at the last election. Not to say that it's not serious, but this idea that somehow beastly Labour is sort of conspiring against the will of the British people, where the Conservatives had nothing to say about this, the last election, and Reform, they did mention it in their manifesto fine, but they were not calling for a national inquiry or separate local inquiries either. This is an issue that has developed in the last couple of months. All parties are responding to it. It's also not based on any kind of new information. It's based on a historic crime.
What's happened, Jonathan, is that the Prime Minister has moved on. He's seen adolescence. He's gone, right, that's how we're going to tackle misogyny. That's how we're going to solve the rape gangs. We're going to play that like a documentary in kids' schools, and we're going to demonise white working class lads over communities that are perpetrating terrible, terrible crimes in this country.
This is not a racial issue.
Well, unfortunately, it is. It is. As Katie Lamb said today, they are predominantly Pakistani rape gangs, and we cannot escape the truth of that. We have to face up to the reality, because if we keep on hiding from it, we are going to perpetuate the same thing.
I tell you, we should have an inquiry about the epidemic of sexual violence that happens in this country all the time, and that it's not a racial issue. And there are.
But this is an isolated issue that has been replicated up and down the country.
Why are we? Why look? I'm not.
It needs to be addressed for us to move forward as a country.
I'm not downplaying this crime at all, but there is a vastly skewed emphasis on this particular aspect of child sexual violence compared to all the other kinds.
Because it's so heinous, and because it would never happen in any other country. You would never hear the kinds of defences that you're hearing from you if these were Pakistani girls in Lahore who are being systemically raped by white British men from South Shields. That's the reason why.
I'm not
because
defending
the world
anything.
No, but the thing is, if this was somewhere else, even everything that you're saying right now, that would even be a conversation anywhere else. Literally, not a single person will stand up and say, "But what about this atrocity? And what about that?" Like, no. I'm not
using whataboutism either. I'm not saying it's not serious. I'm saying
the reason why this is such a big deal. The reason why this is such a big deal is because we believe, many people believe, and there's been evidence to support that authorities who are elected people who we pay our taxes to, who are involved in a cover-up at the highest degree. How can people trust the government? How can people trust to have wider inquiries into sexual abuse if they can't trust the people who are elected to do it?
Well, how could you even trust the government appointing a KC to go through that? If you don't trust the government. Come on, you have to have some level of trust somewhere.
An independent person away from councils would be a start.
The ink isn't even dry on the announcements, and already the government's retreat is complete. After months of mounting public fury and bitter campaigning from victims' families, 5 long overdue local inquiries into grooming gangs have been quietly scrapped. No explanation, no apology, just silence where accountability should be. This is not just a bureaucratic blunder. It is a moral collapse. Let's not sugarcoat what's happened here. We're talking about systemic abuse, rape and exploitation on an industrial scale, allowed to fester in towns and cities across the UK. Rotherham, Telford, Rochdale, Oxford, Huddersfield, familiar names now, not because of their proud history or civic charm, but because they became synonymous with a national shame. The wholesale failure of institutions to protect vulnerable children, overwhelmingly working-class white girls, from organized predatory gangs. For years, victims and whistleblowers were ignored, gaslit, and, in some cases, threatened by the very authorities meant to help them. Police forces didn't want to stoke racial tensions. Council leaders didn't want bad press. Social workers, often overwhelmed and under-resourced, were told to look the other way. And now, when the government finally faced the opportunity to set the record straight through proper local inquiries, they have chosen instead to slam the door shut. The fact that the public had to scream, protest, and petition just to adjudicate these local inquiries is damning enough. That they've now been scrapped anyway without accountability is a profound betrayal. It tells victims their pain doesn't matter. It tells whistleblowers they were fools for speaking out. And it tells perpetrators and the systems that shielded them that they got away with it. But most dangerously of all, it tells the next generation of abusers that they, too, can operate with impunity. As long as they pick the right victims and hide behind the right excuses. In the face of this disgrace, we cannot go quiet. Every MP who let this happen must be made to answer for it. Every local official who obstructed justice must be named. And every victim must know that their fight wasn't in vain, that the public still sees them, believes them, and stands with them. Thanks for watching. If you found this important, drop a comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, share this with someone who needs to see it. You can also join the Telegram channel for uncensored updates and deeper dives into the stories the mainstream won't touch.